Call the meeting to order, right? Okay. It is 5:38 p.m. This meeting of the Guam Election Commission is called to order. Today is Wednesday, September 21, 2022, 5:38 p.m. This is the Guam Election Commission regular meeting held at the GEC Conference Room, Suite 205, Oka Building, Timoning, Guam. Quorum present. We have myself, the chairperson, Alice Tyron, to my right, vice chair, chairperson Gerard Crisostomo, Commissioner Antonia Gumatauta, Commissioner Benny Pinella, Commissioner Pat Seville. To my left, we have Commissioner Joe Moffness, Commissioner Carissa Pangilinan. Also present, we have legal counsel Vincent Camacho and our executive director Maria Pangilinan. We have a quorum. Certification of public notice requirements.
They are published September 14th and 16th inside the Guam Daily Post.
Our minutes, right, Maria? That's usually included in our packet?
Some time ago, Kim Paris asked us not to include it. I can start to include it again.
I think it's important that we have it
I'll
in the
include
packets,
it.
right? I'm sorry, I have not noticed that, but just include it. All right, so we have before us the agenda. And I will need a motion to approve the agenda. Yep, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All right, second. Motion made by Commissioner Moffness, seconded by Commissioner Gumatauto. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Agenda is approved. We need a motion to approve the minutes of September 13th, 2022. This is the regular meeting for the Guam Election Commission. Page 2.
There is a correction that needs to be made.
Okay.
Page, under old business, section 8, new business, item A1. Commissioner Muffness moved to approve the ballot design, and then was seconded by Commissioner Muffness.
Wait, where are we?
Old business? Yeah.
New business.
I'm sorry, new business. Section 8, A1.
All right. Any other corrections to the minutes?
None. Move to accept the minutes, subject to correction.
Second. Motion to accept the minutes, subject to the corrections. Commissioner Seville.
No, it should be a second.
Okay.
I see, yes.
All right. And then seconded by Commissioner Gumatauto. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. The minutes of September 13th has been approved, subject to the corrections. To the corrections, Maria? Okay. Item 5, correspondence. September 11th, Maria?
So we received via email the correspondence from Dr. Ron McNinch and Mr. Peter Santos, and forwarded it to legal counsel, and legal counsel sent us his response.
Can you give us a brief legal counsel with regard to the email correspondence from Mr. McNinch?
Sure. So we received a email from Mr. Ron McNinch, a Guam resident, basically taking the position that the ballot card in the general election for the position of Attorney General should not include a space for the votes to be cast for write-in candidates. He does provide a summary of points and commentary in his email. In response to that, we also received email from Attorney Peter Santos, submitted in response, opposing Mr. McNich's position. In our memorandum before you, we discussed both positions and basically find that the Attorney General's law does not prohibit the Guam Election Commission from including a write-in space for the office of the Attorney General for the reasons set forth in our memo. And so if you have any questions with regard to that, I'll be willing to answer any of those questions.
Do any of the commissioners have questions regarding the email from Mr. McNinch and Mr. Peter Santos, as well as the memorandum before us from our legal counsel? I have a couple of questions, just out of curiosity. So, with regard to this write-in, does active also include temporary admission? I believe that's temporary admission to the bar, right? It speaks to the bar?
Yeah, so under Guam law, if someone meets the criteria for temporary admission, currently they have 5 years to work, but they can only work in a government agency, the Guam Legal Services Corporation, or Mariana's Legal Services. So there's very few employers that can employ non-barred, non-Guam barred attorneys for up to 5 years. Right, after 5 years, they have to have taken the Guam bar and get sworn in to become a full-fledged active member of the Guam bar. Inactive means they are not active under the Guam bar, but it's a sort of separate status for those that may not want to meet the requirements of the continuing legal education requirements every year, or don't live on Guam and don't need to keep an active status for the Guam bar because they're not here to practice.
So, I forget which section, it says active member, right? And then there's a requirement of having to have served so many years or practiced here in Guam so many years, right? As an active member.
In order to qualify for candidate for Attorney General.
To be a candidate for the AG's office. So
Yes.
does temporary admission, and I imagine that's temporary admission, a person has 5 years, they do the 5 years, and they are temporarily admitted to the bar. I hope you're understanding what I'm
Yes.
asking, right? Does that count towards their qualifications? Does that temporary time that they've served before they've passed the bar and are actually practicing as a barred lawyer on Guam?
So a temporary admission is considered active.
Okay,
I think that's what you're asking,
okay.
right? So during their temporary admission, generally the 5 years, they are considered active.
So then that would count towards the qualifications?
Yes, and let me just sort of qualify that is because they have to have passed a bar in another jurisdiction. So it's not like they never taken a bar or passed a bar. They have to have been licensed, taken the bar in another jurisdiction and have been licensed in that jurisdiction. It's just when they come to Guam, they're limited to practice up to 5 years, and they are considered active, but they can only be under the employ of those specific entities.
Until such time that they take the bar?
Until
and
such
pass the
time
bar,
that they
right?
take and pass the bar.
I have another question, and this is probably something that the commissioners should think about moving forward with regard to, I know that we're working on, again, reviewing legislation or the laws that currently exist to provide guidance to, with regard to changes that need to be made, right? So I was just making notes as I was reading this is, do the requirements to become an AG, to qualify as an AG, does that require the GEC to confirm that a write-in candidate has met those requirements before running as a write-in?
No, because you don't have to certify that until they win.
Okay,
And so if you go to, I think we actually addressed that in here. Yeah, so second page, the paragraph that begins with however. So if the write-in candidate should succeed in winning most of the votes, because it's not a majority that's required, it's just a plurality under the plain meaning of the statute, that's at the time when GEC needs to verify that they are, before they certify him as the winner or her as the winner, they would need to certify that they meet the requirements. It's the same thing with any write-in candidate, right? Any write-in candidate that successfully garners enough votes, the Guam Election Commission is not required to certify them before they become a write-in. It's only at the time where they successfully garner sufficient a number of votes. At that time, they would have to meet the requirements, right? Because we don't require anything else of a write-in. No organizational report. Well, we should, because if they raise money over $250 or expend money more than $250, at that point they should file an organizational report and then campaign finance reports, right?
yeah. And that's to my point, is that this is something that we probably should start looking at
Right.
more in depth and review it for potential legislative change, right? Law change. So an individual who runs as a write-in, the Guam Election Commission does not pre-check qualifications. Should the individual be successful in his or her write-in's campaign, it is at that point in time that the Guam Election Commission will review the qualifications and requirements for that position to ensure that they've met those qualifications prior to the Guam Election Commission certifying
them,
them as a
successful
the successful
elected
yeah.
person.
Okay.
If you recall, I think a couple times we've asked the legislature to sort of remove these nonpartisan races from the primary election because it didn't make any sense, to move forward, because even under their laws, it's a plurality of the votes. The winner is who achieves the most votes, right? It's not majority. And so there would really be no reason to have them in the primary election, because it's a really no contest, right? But and this is where we also need to look at the Attorney General's statute, because even though it says the top two vote getters in the primary gets to move on, the language sort of stops there, right? And just says the top two go, but there's nothing else in the statute that says, well, no one else can come in as a write-in in the general election, right? And so the case would have been better for the argument if the legislature kept the language in there that they were required to have a majority of the votes, 50% plus one, similar to what the governor's race requires, right? But we all know what happened, because we all know what happened in the last governor's race when we canceled the primary and we had 3 people running and we had to have a runoff, right? So we know that's why they require the majority, 50% plus one. And we know it was discussed at the legislature with regard to the Attorney General's race. However, that language got removed from the statute, and it was the statute that was ultimately passed and signed into law was a plurality and not a majority. So it wouldn't make sense to say that no one can come in as a write-in, considering 7108 says that the Guam Election Commission shall include a write-in space with the exception of the Guam Education Policy Board.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure, please.
So I'm just thinking, would this also constitute a disruption of the election of the vote?
The write-in candidate?
Mm-hmm.
For the general?
Yes.
No, because it's the top vote getter is the automatic winner.
Okay.
So someone's going to have more votes than anyone else that runs. And according to the statute, that would be the winner.
I'm just interested in protecting the integrity of the election and the process. And if somebody's coming in from the outside and trying to disrupt the election process or disrupt the votes, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're all concerned, however, the law states that. Yeah, no, I understand, right? I understand.
Well, that's the same for every race that has a write-in.
Yes, yeah. And the law states that every race, with the exception of the Guam Education Board, should have a write-in. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then, because you're going to go through this process of, okay, if he makes it through and, you know, say he garners the most votes, then GEC has to sit down and take a look at his qualification. I mean, was he qualified?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we got to go through that process, and you know, again, it's just a lot of work. And I'm wondering, you know, is that the intent? Is that what, you know, this whole thing is about, or?
I can't speak to.
I'm just curious, you
Yeah.
know, because you're having an election that's been mapped out already,
Yeah.
and you know, here we are, we're moving forward in the general election, and
And I think that's why I said is we really should take a look, and maybe the working group can take a look at that as well, right? Laws that potentially need to be changed to address these concerns, so.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I do have one question for legal counsel. Vince, it looks like one of the...
Commissioner Seville, can you just put the mic towards down?
Oh, sorry. It seems that one of the points Dr. McNish is making is that the Attorney General law is under 5 GCA, and the provision for write-in ballots is under 3 GCA. And I think he's arguing that 5 GCA should control because that is specific to the Attorney General as opposed to the general provisions of 3 GCA. And so he's saying under Title V, it only provides for 2 candidates to be on the ballot. How should we respond to that?
I think I explained it, but that is, I don't disagree with that because that's right on point. But when you look at the rest of the language in the statute that says right after, this is on point number 6, the bold underlined, it says in the general election, the candidate receiving the most votes, again, this is the operative word in this language, subject to the commission as having won the election, shall be certified by the Guam Election Commission. So there's nothing in this language that says we can't have a write-in candidate. It just says whoever garners the most votes in the general election, you will have to certify, subject to the certification of the Guam Election Commission. So if you take that language, that doesn't prohibit a write-in candidate, and you go to Section 7108 and you read that in concert, it begs the question, what does the Guam Election Commission have to do? There is a specific language with regard to the mandate of the Guam Election Commission that says every elected office shall have a write-in candidate. So I think that argument would fly if this language in Title V said there would be no write-in candidates or no opportunity for someone to go on to the general other than the two that make it through the primary.
Okay, I get that.
So, in general, when we have two statutes that may have not necessarily conflicting, because the statutes don't conflict, but the more specific statute with regard to Guam Election Commission is that you have to include a write-in candidate. Then we go to the Attorney General's statute, and it doesn't prohibit it, and it in fact says that you still, whoever wins in the general, you're still subject to certifying whether that person qualifies. So you read that together, and I don't see any conflict between the two statutes taking that together. I hope that
Okay.
answered.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or discussions regarding?
Madam Chair, I think this is, an opportunity for the commission to circle back on this, because this is probably going to happen again in the future, and we need, specific language that says, hey, how do you want to address this? Because you have one statute that says, go ahead and you have a write-in, and there's the other statute that does not address it at all. So I think, we need clarification, specific language in the statute.
I mean, just to point out, and I can give you the committee report that discusses this, because the original bill that was passed contemplated the majority rule, right, which is 50% plus one, which would make sense. But then if you apply that same rule into the governor's race has a write-in, and every other race, right? So it's really only the governor's race, the delegates race, that has the majority rule vote, but yet they still have a write-in, right? And so I think what happened, and this is just from my experience in working with the legislature, so they introduced a bill. This is what the proponents wanted it. But during the discussion, things have changed, and they basically strike out certain provisions, but they don't clean up the statute enough to, and so that's why under the rules of statutory construction, we have to look at what the plain language of the meaning of the words that are in the statute. And then if we need to sort of go back and clarify that, then we go to what the legislative intent was, and then we go back to what the committee report was. And in this case, it's sort of reverse, right? The law changed, and it was through the discussion at the committee level, but the law that sort of changed was very different from what was proposed. I mean, complete opposite. So it went from majority to plurality. And so, I think that's this is one good case where I think the legislature made the change last minute and didn't clean it up enough. So I think going forward with the working group, it's something to have a discussion with the legislature and say, what do you guys really want? Make it clear.
Yes. Madam Chair, I think that is perfectly correct. I think we need to separate ourselves from interpretation and get a definitive, response from the legislature on this particular statute. I think we should take a look at the committee report as well. I mean, we should ask for a copy of that and, and review it.
You're not recommending not taking any action tonight, are you? Because we have to make a determination tonight with regard to the ballot, because ballots have to be sent out on the 23rd, but no later than the 23rd to meet the other requirements. So that's not, this is something that...
This is just discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that the working committee can address at a later time, right? Make
Yes, ma'am.
note and- Okay. I appreciate that, Commissioner Pennell. I just wanted to be sure that, I was
I'm
understanding.
sorry, Madam Chair, I would also note, I think Mr. Santos makes a good point, that under just the general rules for statutory construction, you go with the plain meaning of the statute. And he points out that 3 GCA 7108B says, pretty clearly seems to say, for each office on a ballot, and except the Education Board, we're supposed to provide a line with an oval for write-ins. And when it says each, I mean, that's a pretty bright line test, each office on a ballot. And I agree that it might be something to take up with the legislature to see if they want to clarify anything, but right now, for our job tonight, it seems the bright line test is already set out in 3 GCA.
So we have before us legal counsel's memorandum. His analysis of the memorandum on the concern regarding Guam Attorney General race, general election ballot. Legal counsel and Maria, do you need the commissioners to move to accept your, is there?
You do? I don't think, this is just the opinion, and you make the determination when you approve the ballot,
Oh,
right?
so we don't need to accept your memorandum?
Comment before we vote on the
We just
ballot.
approve.
It's kind of
Okay.
pointless to have it afterwards if we know that's what
I mean, this is not the first time that we have the Attorney General's race.
Right.
Previous ballots in previous elections included the write-in, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So precedence has been established.
Okay. All right, so we don't need to move to approve your memo?
No, you would either just take the recommendation when you
Okay.
vote for the ballot.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
What? We didn't vote on the ballot yet. When we vote on the ballot. We
Oh,
did?
yeah, I believe you did last meeting. You approved the ballot.
Sorry,
Motion by Joe Muffness and seconded by Joe Evans.
sorry, okay.
Joe took care of this for us, okay.
It might be a void motion.
Subject to correction.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, so there's no action needed tonight, okay. Is that correct? All right, okay. If we don't have any further discussions, questions regarding this email, the September 11, 2022 email, as well as item B, the September 13, 2022 email correspondence from Mr. Santos. No further discussion. Yes, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, how about a response to both of them?
Work with legal counsel. Do we want to respond to them? How would
I think
vote?
your response is that there's a write-in space on the Attorney General slot.
Okay, just work with legal and respond to them. Let them know. Okay, on to, no further discussion on item 5, correspondence. Item 6, Executive Director's Report, 2022 General Election, election timeline.
Madam Chair, the next thing to do is this Friday, where the absentee ballots go out. We're ready to, we've been working on them. I believe we have about 342 ballots to mail out. That includes the e-ballots as well.
I'm sorry, that includes what?
The e-ballots. Yeah, so I think we mail out like 165, and then the rest are e-ballots that we send out on Friday.
Can you give us the exact number of ballots going out?
Yes, ma'am.
And whether it's email or not. And then I understand that at a certain date, we no longer send the ballots out by mail, it's via email. What date is that?
Well, we don't have a certain date, ma'am, but as it gets closer as it gets closer to to the general election day, when they write to us to request for the ballot, we ask them, would they want us to mail it out, or would they want us to e-ballot, and we highly advise that we send an e-ballot out. It's just a matter of when Tom says, okay, ma'am, we're going to start letting them know. We don't have a set date. I apologize. I can tell you that, go ahead.
The reason I bring that up is because in the primary it was brought up. People thought that they could get their ballots mailed, and then when they were told, they said, no, the deadline is this time, and that wasn't announced. So we want to be sure that information is provided to the public.
No, ma'am, the deadline to receive the request is 3 days before the election. The deadline to receive the request is 3 days before the election for off-island ballots.
Even if it's email?
Yes,
And why is that?
the law, chapter 10.
Okay, 3 days before the election. So the election's on the 8th.
Because they have 10 days for us to receive.
To first receive. So is that 3 working days, or is that inclusive of holidays and weekends?
It's 3 working days.
Okay, so then that'll be the deadline, that's a Friday then.
Maria, just for clarification, when you say e-ballot, you're talking about the email ballot?
Yes, sir.
Email, okay.
November 3rd would be the, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to be careful because there's a holiday there. So you can't, yeah,
So 3, 4, and 7 are your working days.
thank you.
So it's November 3rd. November 3rd is the deadline, the last day to make a request for an absentee ballot.
Yes, ma'am.
Maria, can we have tonight,
Yeah.
right? If you want to...
I'm just, hoping that maybe we can go ahead and just do it now. I know it's going to cost us extra money, and that's, something that we should go to the legislature and ask for, if that's what it's going to take. It's going to cost us, but we should, account for that.
You're suggesting that we open at 8 o'clock in the morning?
8 to 7, yes.
It's not the money, it's the staff. The permanent staff are always there, sir. And we're there also through reconciliation. And reconciliation sometimes lasts until midnight.
Okay.
I understand the wanting to extend the hours.
Correct.
Right? So this is early voting. If you don't make early voting, you still have election day.
Right. But the early voting starting at 8, really caters to the private sector, right? Because the private sectors are the ones that we had difficulty bringing them to vote this last round. They didn't come out in force. It was mostly Guam workers. So this time around, I think if we open it up earlier, we might see more of the private sector coming out to vote, because it's not conducive with their time of reporting to work and their time of getting off at work.
So we have Saturday, and then we have election day. Now, in the previous election, early voting, do you have any data that shows that the majority of people that came out to vote were Guam workers as opposed to private sector workers? And during the early voting, please refrain from comment until public comment. during the early voting, what were our times?
This time, in the general election, we opened at 9.
9 to
6 or 7.
9 to 6 or 7. We had Saturdays, and we went Monday, we did Mondays as well, correct?
Yes,
And we had Saturdays and 3 different sites.
correct.
And what was the time on Saturday?
I believe it was 10 to 3 or 10 to 4.
Okay. Commissioner Pennell, I understand, and I recognize, right? There's Saturdays and then there's election day. We also have to take into consideration the amount of staff that we have and the requirements placed upon them to ensure that everything that they have clarity of mind to be able to do the work and to ensure that everything that's happening, the entire process, right, is protected, is conducted safely, right? I mean, I saw that on election night when you had some people with their eyes rolling backwards because they're so exhausted. The commissioners, ourselves, right? So we want to be able to, we want to ensure that the staff is there. And to that end, Maria, is you've always been encouraged, is as the years go by, you're probably going to need more staff. So keep hiring staff so that we'll be able to get to that,
I
right?
think, we can compromise and do a hybrid of something, right?
Oh, what?
A hybrid of something, we can, take a look at maybe certain days, we open up earlier, certain days that we close a little bit later or something like that. So that, we are capturing as much of the voters as we can get, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or some sort of thing like
Okay.
that, right? So there's always, 1,000 ways to skin the cat.
Okay. Well, come up with the plan. You guys are the working group. Come up with the plan, keeping in mind everything that's been discussed.
Sure.
And then we can, October 11th, Maria, we have a meeting, right, before that? Yeah. Or October 11th, yeah, it's early voting. If there needs to be a change, right,
Sure.
we can make that recommendation at that point in time.
Absolutely.
I'm not opposed to it. Don't misunderstand me.
No, I know you're
I'm
not.
trying to take everything into consideration, right, and everything that needs to be done.
I think all of us want,
So, yeah, of course,
we all want the same
we want
thing.
greater participation.
Yep.
So we can discuss that. Vice Chair, did you have
I
a?
thought maybe a hybrid, because that will confuse the voter even more. But maybe just a compromise, we start at an hour early, 9 o'clock to 6, and then you've got your Saturday. And maybe not at the West End on Saturday, but go out to that Manila, Moleso, and Derrido on Saturdays, like we did 2 years ago, right? And then there's always election day. That's the day that I consider the real election day, not the early vote day.
Okay. Well, I'm not opposed to the working group, right, coming up and discussing that with Maria, taking everything into consideration, and then bringing it before the board to
Absolutely.
take action. Legal counsel, we're okay in that respect, right? Wait.
So, it would behoove us if we can tell the public sooner than later. And if it's, okay, so, Madam Chair, you're suggesting, like, we open at 9 and close at 6, that's okay. Open at 9 and close at 6, if that's good with the 7 of you. We can do that, we can, that's
I'm good with that. I
Okay,
mean, it's a
9 to
compromise, right,
6,
so I'm
yeah.
there.
9 to 6, and possibly, and you also agreed to do it on Saturdays.
Yeah, we're going to expand Saturdays.
So may I bring up the point that having early voting on Saturday at Weston is a huge compromise. The hotel guests will be, mostly in, and there's happenings at the hotels. So I had, I'm thinking that maybe, and we get bigger numbers in the village. When we go to the village, we get bigger numbers than when we were at GCIC. So since we're addressing that, may we ask that we let the public know as soon as we can, and if the 7 of you are in agreement, 9 to 6, Tuesday through Friday, and then 10 to 3 at Malesu, Manila, and Dedidu on Saturday.
Not all at the same time. You'd alternate. One Saturday would be Maleso, one Saturday would be Mangilao, and one Saturday Dedido. Okay.
Ma'am, yes, yes.
I'm not opposed to any of that. The commissioners are
Yeah.
amenable.
Do we have the money to advertise that?
Yes, I could.
Okay.
Okay, and advertise it, yes. There's,
And can you go on radio?
I will.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, our staff haven't thought out about which village to hit first. So if you can leave it to us to decide which village to hit first, or did you all want to decide which village to hit first and when?
As far as the staff you guys can make that decision.
Okay.
We have
And we'll let you know when we decide.
October 11th. 1, 2, 3. It'd just be 3 Saturdays before, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So, we need a motion, right, to amend our previous and accept this new, what is it, time? We're looking at 9 to 6, Tuesday through Friday. Saturdays,
10 to 3.
10 to 3, in Maleso, Magnilao, and Dedido, hitting it one Saturday at a time, just one location at a time. Correct? And we are going to leave that to the Election Commission Executive Director and staff to determine which area to go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
So, one que- they can still register and vote.
Up until October 24th.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, before we put it into motion, I know we left it to Maria and the staff to put out which Saturday is going to go first. If we're going to put this out an announcement, we need to know that too offhand. Because if right now we're approving the 9 to 6 p.m. Tuesday to Friday, and then the 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays, and how soon are we going to find that out? Which village is going to go first?
So Maria and the staff will make that determination, and they'll include it in the advertisements. Unless the commissioners want to determine which place to go first, I'm going to leave it to I would prefer that the staff make that determination. So, and Maria, how soon will you be able to get this out to the public?
Our regular staff are still there, so I can start working on it tonight, ma'am, and we can get it out.
And we need to ensure that it's clear
Yes,
that Saturday voting is not going to be at the West End.
that's correct. Ma'am, and I'm sure our media partners are listening in on live stream.
That's fine, but we need to continue to make sure that the public hears it over and over and over and over and over again, right? Okay. So we need a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move a motion, again, for reconsideration for early voting Tuesday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6, and then on Saturdays from 10 to 3, and those will be at Dedido, Manilao, and Mauricio, and that we would look at adjusting times if necessary, depending on the flow of traffic and the trend.
And for clarification, that is one village per
One village.
Saturday.
One
One
village.
village per Saturday, which we will leave up to the GEC staff to decide.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Maria, please get on that ASAP. Any discussion on the timeline? Any other questions regarding the timeline?
Madam Chair, the next thing to do is the precinct official training. That starts as soon as tomorrow. And then Friday is when our absentee ballots go out. Okay? And that's on the, that's all on the timeline.
You will need us to approve the precinct official handbook. Do we have any discussions with regard to precinct official training? Did the work group have any?
Madam Chair, we, in our working group, we did discuss some ways to, some issues that we think need to be emphasized in the training, and I would leave it up to Maria and the staff to incorporate those. I mean, it's nothing new, it's just a change of emphasis to focus precinct officials on the real hot spot that seems to come up, provisional ballots and how best to respond to that to avoid conflict and getting into arguments with voters.
The other thing I think you need to include is some kind of affidavit stating that if they don't stay the full time, they're not going to get paid, so that it's in writing and that they can't come back. And so it should be part of the packet that they understand that the payment is contingent upon, because I just don't want this to be an issue again.
Yeah.
Do they sign something?
When they sign up as precinct official, that indicates what Vince is saying?
They take an oath, but the oath, they sign a few things, including the oath and the application. But with regard to that,
Been paid.
that's stressed. At least, that's mentioned at least 3 times during the training. But
Nothing
we'll
should
have it
be
in writing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
have it in writing. Yeah.
Because they work, whether it's 1 hour or 2 hours, you know, there's labor laws that may require us to pay these people.
So legal counsel can just look into that and work with Maria on that affidavit to ensure that we're protected, right, from this. Since we're on the discussion of precinct officials, Maria, part of that working group, did you include their, the training for safety, like securing their area, ballots, things like that, on the day of election, how the setup is
Yes,
going
ma'am.
to be?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I heard that the last time, and then when I went out to the different precincts, I didn't see it. With regard to setting up the areas, right? So please be sure that every precinct is aware that they need to set up and secure their area.
Yes, ma'am, we even have a layout in the handbook.
And it is not for the maintenance workers to set up these precincts. And then, can you look into having these precincts, and this is really important, having these precincts set up the night before? So just look into it to see if that's something that can be done by the team. People may not think this is important, but it's very important. Very important. Right? Security of the ballots, we don't want anything brought into question. Okay? Do we have any further discussion regarding the timeline and the precinct officials, poll maintenance workers?
Madam Chair, I'm assuming we still have vacancies for precinct officials, and if they're recruited, or they come in and apply after the 24th, trainings will continue, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We train up until the day before sometimes.
Okay.
With regard to precinct official, I've been going back and forth with the University of Guam. I have yet to receive the go-ahead, so we will, I'm hoping that when I get back to the office, I can, or nothing else is in my email. We were supposed to start the class on Friday. If they give me the go-ahead, I'm going to make it start it next week. If we get the go-ahead, I'll start it next week and just meet Friday and Saturday next week.
District registration, we need to approve the 2022 District Voter Registrar Manual. And then also the approval of the District Voter Registrars. Page 14. Need a motion for that, Maria?
Ma'am.
All right. Can we get a motion to, has everybody, I know this was just provided to us tonight. Can you identify any major changes?
No, ma'am. This handbook has been used throughout the years, and it piggybacks on the actual volunteer voter registrar handbook. The only difference is the reporting in to us every day on district registration nights.
And district
And
registration, basically, would be individuals stationed out at the mayor's offices, mayor offices, okay. Do we have any questions regarding the voter registrar, the guide for district voter registrars? Yes, legal.
I just want to also note that everything in the manual is updated to include the number of voters per precinct, the names of the district registrars.
The precinct official, in which handbook, ma'am, sir?
The district voter
Okay,
registrar.
yeah.
Right, so everything's updated
As of today.
as of today.
Yeah,
So that's a big change because
Yes.
it's not all the same people.
yeah.
Well, the guide has been updated, and then the names for the district registrars on page 14 has
Yeah.
also been updated, all right? Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the guide for district voter registrars? All right. Second? Motion to approve the guide for district voter registrars made by Commissioner Gumatata and seconded by Commissioner Seville. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. No discussion. All right. Page 14, we have a list of the district registrars. We need a motion to approve. If we had a chance to review it, no questions?
So
Who
move.
are these people? All right.
Subject to some corrections or
Correction.
updates. One of the individuals here passed away, and so that's just been found out.
That just found out today.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, just passed out, and I just mentioned it to Maria.
Which one that? Sebagai saya.
Yeah.
Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're looking at the district registrars.
That's this one, page 14 and 15. Correct, Maria?
Yes.
All right, so there's a motion which was made to accept the district voter registrars made by Commissioner Gumatautau and seconded by Commissioner Mofnis, subject to corrections and updates. Right? And that's page 14 and 15. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Maria, keep us informed if there are any changes. Okay. Where are we at? Precinct officials, poll maintenance workers. Do we have any discussion with regard to precinct officials and poll maintenance workers? You also have before you, the commissioners have before you the 2022 General Election Precinct Official Handbook. If I understand correctly, this has been updated. Correct, Maria?
We're still, I still need to do a final look on one of the forms, and then we'll mass print them.
Which form is that?
The EC 13. Page 27, I think.
And that's for also EC 13 provisional as well, right?
what is it that you needed corrections on, Maria?
This is this is based on just one ballot, and so this is an update from the primary election, that's all.
Okay. It actually looks neater than before. Do you have any discussion or questions? All right, can I get a motion to approve the 2022 general election precinct official handbook?
Move.
All right, so motion made by Commissioner Pinella and seconded by Commissioner Seville. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, all those opposed? All right, general election precinct official handbook 2022 was accepted. Precinct officials, approval of 2022 general election precinct officials. It's on, the list is on page 16. Wow.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry?
Walk in.
Walk-in. Madam Chair, at the bottom, just please know that it's actually the general election, not the primary. On the footer.
Copy.
Thank you.
All right. So
Madam
you
Chair,
need,
move to approve.
subject to updates and positions
Corrections, yeah.
being filled, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, motion to approve the precinct official list. Precinct officials on page 16.
Ma'am, I just have one question on this one here.
17, 18, yes.
Maria, can you give us an update once these precinct officials are filled in? Because you see a lot of blanks in here. Yeah.
After she's done with her class, we'll be full.
It gets worse, because we schedule them and they don't come. So I guess after every weekend, I'll update you with a new list.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor, right, to accept the list, as well as to, subject to updates and individuals coming in, correct, Maria?
Right.
Right? By Commissioner Pinella, seconded by Commissioner Gumatauta. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The list is approved, Maria, subject to updates. It's almost 200 that,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Absentee report. Wow, 457 homebound.
Madam Chair, I had a question on the, since we're on absentee with the homebound, are you still allowing for poll watchers from both parties for homebound?
Mr. Vice Chair, we sent out the letter to get them to come.
Okay.
Just so you know, we will start scheduling them October 11th. The first week typically is organized where we have them going out to villages. So our observers will follow us in their vehicles, and we will be at that village. And depending on how our homebound voters are, we may need to visit them at least once, right? As we go further into the weeks, what happens is sometimes, and our observers that have come know, sometimes we would have to go to Umaktak and Jigu on the same day. So we will contact you, and we will make sure we stay in touch with your points of contact for homebound.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any questions? All right. Monthly voter by precinct, 58,000.
So the next report will come out on, our cutoff date is the 25th. So our report will come out, later after the 25th of September. So this was the primary election precinct report and also the motor voter.
Maria, I'm sorry, can you tell us, like, how many of these registered, how many's for motor voter?
Yeah.
Right? How many, of all the registered voters, how many of them came from motor voter? Right?
On page 27?
In the back. Okay.
And of the 1,100 new votes you're showing, 1,131 since July, how many of those, do you know, were motor voter?
Oh, since July?
We're showing a bump of 1,100,
It's July. There's July to August.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
So 6, 7,
Well, 600 is new.
So
So,
858,
yeah, 858.
858 of those looks like are motor voters.
yeah.
Have you worked anything out with DRT, the vehicle division at DRT to notify these individuals? That was like one of the biggest concerns and issues that we were having in the primary. People didn't know that they were changed. And is it for the Guam Election Commission to notify these individuals that their precinct or where they vote has changed?
Before they are, when they are being serviced at DMV, the law says they have to be clearly notified of motor voter and tell them what the process is for motor voter. That's clear in the law. So we wrote a standard operating procedure for them. We even put the verbatim instructions for them, and this was back in June, July.
Can you please follow up
Yes.
and maybe include large signs that say motor voter, if you do this, this is what happens?
They're in every single driver's examiner's booth.
No, but for the individuals coming up. I'm sorry, it's in the booth, but is it big enough, large enough?
Yes,
Sometimes
it's a
people don't read.
poster sign.
Okay.
And they're outside too, ma'am, they're outside too in the waiting area. We have a video for them.
I want to go take a look.
If you recall, maybe a couple elections ago, we had that guy come before the commission because he got a letter that he was transferred.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah.
Do you guys, who does that letter? You do. So they send out notices
Yeah, we send out notices to them.
Okay.
when they get transferred.
And you have been, right? Okay.
Yeah. Do we,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, well, I guess this is not related to that, but with Delgado, and specifically because Beneventi was eliminated, right? And I know we have a billboard, I think, in Delgado that, but I don't know if that's enough, that I think we should consider sending letters to those voters that were voting in that precinct and let them know that they either have been moved to Liguan or Okru. That may, Delgado had a very low turnout for Delgado, and some of the precincts is even lower than the overall low number of 30%. And I don't know if it's attributed to that change. Maybe people went there, didn't see anything, and just took off. But I know that we have I saw it just today, in fact, over by the flea market, yeah. A lot of people don't see that, and you're driving, you're not gonna, catch that. But I don't know how, what that would take and how many letters you have to send out to those voters that were typically or registered in Beneventi, and we now have moved those precincts out to the other two. again, that's as a means to try to improve and increase the voter turnout for the general election.
We can send them out then, sir.
Well, Maria, in addition to letters, right, going out to these individuals, is actually just putting it out in the media. And just really every day, it's like every day. And then put up big signs, posters, whatever it takes, because Vice Chair is correct. There was a really bad turnout in Dededo, right? So, which brings me to this, and it's probably not a good time, considering, is at some point in time, should we consider moving, where are we at? Liguan
Liguan and Okoto.
Liguan to Okudu? So you have one area for all of, I'm just putting it out there. We don't have to, for Dededo, yeah. So, because Okudu is large enough, it's huge, and it can, there's only 5 precincts. There's only 5 precincts at Liguan. So logistically, it could work out, could be better for the GEC as well.
One
It's-
location?
It's huge parking for, even if you get a rush crowd. I mean, this is what, the access in and out, you've got the traffic, it's much safer for electioneers, those tents that they put up. We really need to take note for Okudu, if we decide to move Liguan there or not, okay? We need wheelchairs. And golf carts. So while I was up there, I saw a couple of people coming in with a cane and oxygen and out of breath. It's a long walk from the parking area to the actual precinct to vote, regardless of which side you're on. So please look, I say we get golf carts to transport our voters. You need more signs on the curbside for the accessible part of voting. There's actually 2 sides there that was open for accessible, but the signage was not visible. You can see it. All right, so, and then another thing I wanted to bring up to the commissioners and legal counsel you can guide is, I think in most of the precincts, it's a really long walk back to the precinct out to the curbside. Are we able to hire actual individuals to assist the precinct officials? So you'll have like 2 people walking out, taking care of curbside, walking back in, as opposed to the precinct officials coming out, or 2 precinct officials coming out, taking away from the crowd that's inside.
We can do 1 precinct official.
But hire an
Assistant.
assistant, so that so that's something to plan for. I think this is Okudu. This is needed in Okudu, hire more people. Look at the golf carts to transport and wheelchairs. I mean, yeah. It'd be good if we could get electronic wheelchairs or what are they called? The
motorized ones,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
motorized, yeah. But can you look into that only because, what I saw and experienced that day with a lot of individuals with disabilities. And I approached several of them, I said, you could vote outside on the curbside, and they said, no, we want to come in, right? So they want to be there voting with everybody else. Okay? And I think we need to examine all the other precincts to see where that might be needed.
So are we,
So
is this a good time to talk about merging all to Okudu?
all of Dededo?
Want to make that change now? I don't, it's up to you, but
Vice Chair he brought up a good point about how maybe some people didn't realize they were no longer at BMS, didn't go there. Maybe for the advertising and notifying, it'd be easier if you're just saying Dededo is all at Okudu, didn't matter what their last name was, to try to figure out which school they're going to be at. Just a thought.
That actually works for families. Like if you have a household, somebody with T and then the other one with an A, they can all just drive to the same site, right? I mean, the goal is make it accessible to the voters, right? Addressing the logistic logistical concerns.
Madam Chair, did we get, assistance from the mayor's office? Because part of the problem that I saw up there was the traffic control
In Okuru?
at Okudu. It was pretty crowded, and so, you also have the camps, right, all alongside, outside, and so, people coming in to enjoy the camp, and there's only 2 lanes, so traffic would stop and then start, stop, start, and then you had the intermingling of voters with, the,
We can ask the mayor. I didn't have any discussions with the mayor, Maria, yeah.
Our mayors
with
helped us a lot they helped us a whole lot.
okay.
They put up the canopies, they delivered all the food, so we didn't hear anybody, none of the food was late. I reached out to them to deliver the food. They helped us a whole lot, so, with regard to traffic, I know that some of them were helping. I know Manila, I think, was helping. But unfortunately, Dededo has 2 locations, so.
So if we had one location, that would resolve the situation.
I think
It
we
would
can,
be like the vaccination shot when the lines were on, but hopefully with early vote, that more people come out for early vote than they do in, that election. I mean, I agree with centralizing it to Okuru, but we may run into that traffic going in, going out, and we may need the mayor's assistance or somebody's assistance, because the electioneers are on both sides.
I'm just
Hold up
concerned we're going to
traffic.
send a shot to everybody if we do this now, keep it as it is, and then maybe for next election, we can look at doing one shot. 'Cause too much going on right now.
With all due respect, Madam Chair, this is not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll bring it up at the next,
Okay.
it was part of precinct. Poll watching, poll. Yeah, so we can bring that up in the next,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just so I can be thinking about it, what we're talking about is having all of Dededo vote at Ukudu. Okay. Okay.
The only good thing about Okudu is that it's a big parking space, but we need to really look into the feasibility of getting a golf cart, like what they did during the pandemic vaccination and all that. And so far as traffic control, we can meet with the GPD and, see what they can help us out on that, or try to use some of the ROTC personnel that can help us out on that. They did that last time too. But since it's not on the agenda, maybe we'll bring it up.
So
another
Maria,
time.
just look into that.
Yeah.
And then for the working group, you guys can take a look at Okuru and make your presentation.
Okay.
Good. Where are we at? Absentee, monthly. Volunteer voter registrar report? That's where we've discussed everything else.
So we're training tonight, ma'am, and we're training again tomorrow. I know 10 people signed up for tonight's training,
Okay.
and some people signed up for tomorrow, too.
Any questions regarding item E, volunteer voter registrar report? If not, a monthly financial report?
We just consolidated last meeting's report with this, so that, because I think we only had a few, so it's there. Still trying to figure out how to spend the $602,000 back, journal voucher it to the 2,000, to the primary election results, expenses.
Can you buy golf carts?
To rent golf carts, it's $8,000.
Or rent?
To rent.
Whew, okay. All right, any questions regarding the monthly financial report, U.S. Election Assistance Commission grant? I don't have any questions. Okay. 22, election campaign finance, page 37. So final reports were due September 12th? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Were notices sent to these individuals that did not submit their finals?
Not yet, ma'am.
And the commissioners can, at this point, take action and, such as assigning fines?
For the non-filers.
Yes, for the non-filers, of course. The non-filers of the final report. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Anybody want to make a motion? And the commissioners can determine the amount. Correct?
Madam Chair, I think, well, it's still, but September 12th was the last day, right?
Yep, that's it.
And before we go into the general election, I think it behooves us to act on these non-filers in this period before early vote starts and before the general election, to refer these folks to the AG's office. Whether we impose a fine or not, I guess that'll be up to the commission, but as opposed to doing it all at the end,
Yeah.
because this is a primary election reports that we're talking about.
We
Right.
can impose a fine and send them to the Attorney General's
General, yeah.
office.
Yeah, so I would recommend a letter go out by Friday saying, number one, you failed to file, you failed to meet the date. The commissioners will be meeting on whenever our next meeting is to discuss the potential fines, and your names will be transmitted. So at least there's some diligence in warning them.
Can we just determine the fine tonight?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you'll have your fine, you'll have referred to the AG's office, and we're done with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, how much do
You
we
have the
have?
staff, Maria, to do it?
Maria?
Does she have the staff to do this?
Sir, also, is it just the ones that haven't filed or the ones that filed after the 12th?
The ones that haven't filed, I mean,
There's only a few of them, right?
Are we going to give them a cure period?
That was the mature period. It was due September 6th.
September 12th. September 12th,
12th.
yeah. So what's going to protect us from being sued? Legal? We get sued anyway, no matter what we do.
So you're not going to assess the fines tonight, you're just going to determine the amount. But again, this determining the amount wasn't on the agenda, and
Okay.
so I would put that on the next agenda, and then vote on the fine at the next agenda, or the next meeting, and then vote to assess the fine at the same meeting. But in the meantime, before the next meeting, I would have Maria send out a letter saying, this is what's going to happen at the next meeting.
Did we, in the previous election, I know we transmitted a letter for one, I guess it was a PAC, right? I think the election 2 years ago, 4 years ago, and we determined, we assessed a fine. So that fine, is that just for that election? Or should it be a fine that we adopt for all non-filers? I recall it was like $1,000. Was it?
It wasn't, it was specific to something
To that
else.
one.
Yeah.
I think the fines that were assessed in the past were specific, and what the commission did was they actually called these individuals in, and they looked at the totality of the circumstances and their explanations, and I think they also allowed them to try to cure any deficiencies, and they failed to do any of that, and that's when the commission assessed that.
I think there's a log that you are maintaining about when you've contacted these individuals, right? Do you have a log of when you've contacted these individuals?
Reminders were sent out like months before, but for the final report, we didn't send it out. We were seeing these candidates, so we were letting them know that it was due.
I think that because of the issue 2 years ago, 4 years ago with the San Nicolas case, I think we need to tidy up these, but just from my understanding, was it September, because I noticed most of these were submitted on September 6th. Was there an extension or a change of date? I thought it was the 6th.
Mr. Vice Chair, what happened was, in calculating the number of days, we were using calendar days versus work days. So we accepted them up until September 12th. September 6th was,
The initial.
yeah.
Okay.
We have 13, it looks like here.
Maria, do these candidates have the option to file an extension?
No.
Okay.
Do you need a motion? We just need a... We just instruct Maria to send out the letters. All right. Okay. Old business, 2022 primary election. Do we have any discussion? We'll close that out, right? Okay. No questions, discussion. Ballot measures?
Ma'am, that's still on the agenda because there's still, I believe, some more days for him to turn in signatures.
Okay.
For clarification, he has 120 days to submit, but that doesn't mean he has met the requirement for ballot placement in the 2022 general election.
It doesn't mean he hasn't met the requirements.
He has not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No discussion. New business, Office of the Inspector General?
Ma'am,
The audit?
yeah, so, as you know, in the last meeting, I notified you that, we were notified that we were going to be audited. The scheduling conference is tomorrow, so we will be on Zoom for them to discuss when the audit will start.
Okay. Do we have any questions with regard to that for Maria or legal? All right, okay. Legal counsel report? Okay. Public comments, please come forward, state your name, make your comment.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Guam Election Commission. My name is Ron McNinch. I sent a piece of correspondence earlier. I think it's under 5A on your agenda items. I'd just simply like to thank the Commission for reviewing my request and reviewing the issue that I had. I wanted to assure the public that the Guam Election Commission will diligently and dutifully review concerns raised by the public, and I think that's important for the public to know. Also, I appreciate the work of the legal counsel in reviewing my concern. I think there are certain things that probably need to be worked on with the legislature, and I certainly in the future will work with the commission and with the legislature to try to correct some things that I think might be holes here and there. And by the way, in the last 2 weeks, my students did polls. A fraction, minor fraction of 1% will even do write-ins for this office. So if I'd known that, and I probably wouldn't have written the way I'd written it. So in retrospect, just to give you that little feedback, a minor fraction, I couldn't believe how small the number was, and we validated it twice. So in a way, I hate raising moot issues with commissions, but I just wanted to give you that as feedback. Also, on a second item, I wanted to mention that we're working with Ms. Maria Pangilinan at the university. This is with my university hat. And we're absolutely, it'll be a go. It's just being a little bureaucracy. I run the bureaucracy department over at the university, and she's having to go through all the elements of bureaucracy to try to get things approved, and we're going to get it approved, and we're certainly going to work with the Election Commission on these efforts. As a final point, this is a third point, I've been deeply concerned about political action communities in our community. I've seen some of the stuff in the media about political action committees, fundraising, not being diligent in fundraising, and I'm a fraud examiner. This is my fraud examiner hat. All the wild, creative financing that seems to be going on with political action committees. I'm deeply, deeply concerned about that. It's not the fault of the Guam Election Commission. I think this is another one of those law things where we need some more boundaries for these political action committees, because my concern is I'm deeply concerned about what went on in this election cycle with certain political action communities. I'm very deeply concerned. I don't say that lightly or with, just to say it. I'm deeply concerned. I think that there are some ways that we can work as a community to solve that, and I think that framing the problem and knowing what the best practice is, because they're fairly novel in our environment. We don't have a lot of them. I think there was one political action committee that did everything right. I'm a member of the Guam Women's Chamber, and the group that worked with the Guam Women's Chamber did exactly what they're supposed to do. And then there are other PACs that were I was very disappointed to see just some of the news reports on how non-compliant they appeared to be, and I'm deeply, deeply concerned about that. Thank you very much and for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Good evening. Juan Carlos Benitez, I'm the chairman of the Republican Party. Thank you so much for letting me speak here. I want to just address a couple of issues. I'm very grateful that you're extending the time for the early voting. I still feel that based on the data that I was provided the Election Commission and we have sorted, we see around 68% of the early voters to be Guam employees. So it does have data that shows that there was a disparate use of the early voting process and easy to ratify. By extending those time periods, I'm really concerned about the ability of private sector employees to take off at 10 in the morning to go vote and not come back until after lunch through the process. So I applaud extending it to 9. I really think it should have gone from 8 to 7. If it's something we could not address in this election, it should be something that the Election Commission looks moving forward to all future elections, since we're going to be stuck with this process moving into the future. And I'll remind you that over 25% of the voters that participated in the primary election voted in early vote. So if you put that exponentially into the efforts that I know the Republican Party is doing, and I absolutely know the Democratic Party is doing, to expand on that percentage, you're going to have a lot of early voting happening and occurring during this general election. So that's my first concern regarding that. Unifying in one school in the north, I really sense the wrong message right now. If you're going to look at it another time. The Filipino community did not show up to participate in the past election, and I think that all of a sudden getting two of their voting precincts closed, it doesn't send the right message. I'd like the idea of promoting more voters and more voter participation. I think it would have been detrimental to do it in the middle of an election. I like the idea of, if you're going to discuss that as more of a larger scoping review of the Guam election process and addressing issue as the writing candidacy on an election that you went through a primary just for the fun of it, for the Attorney General election, something to look at. I respect legal counsel and I understand the legal interpretation of the concept of the Attorney General election, but that's second statute. These two laws did not pass at the same time. There was a second law that specifically addressed doing the Attorney General as an elected official, and that statute Your right doesn't say not to provide for writing candidates. It doesn't say that you will provide for writing candidates. And I think that there's even argument to be said that you need to interpret the specific act as being the one that rules the specific election it was done to address. I look forward to seeing the the intent of Congress or our legislature when they write the statute, if they really had an intent to force us to go through this process twice. But it's that takes me over to biggest concern, and I have, or not concern, biggest issue I would like the Election Commission to address moving into the future. Maria and her team have been amazing, and the quality of data and information they provided through the early voting process was outstanding and very well timely prepared for the both parties. My concern was that even though I got the data for the early voting, we did not create data for the actual election day. So I could not correlate the data of people that voted in the early voting with people that voted on election day. So I could not tell if somebody double voted or participated in the election, or if the numbers actually would have matched about the amount of people that participated in the election and the amount of people that actually supposedly voted in the process. Just the technicalities, so I like those. I inquired with Maria about the general election, and I was, if I understood correctly, told that they're not going to do that either for the general election. That the only data that would be provided is the one of those that did not vote. Those that did not vote is a separate group than those that could have voted twice. So my hope is I misheard or misunderstood, but I think in the 2020 we should be able to have the entire voter roll so you can coalesce and just double check that things were done correctly. If it was my misunderstanding, I'm happy about my misunderstanding if it were that way. But it's something I think it has value, and it's something that's useful for the future. Motor voter law. I think it's the best thing that could ever happen to Guam if they're matching physical address to actual voter, because the reality is that the majority of the people in Guam are registered through P.O. boxes and vote in different villages or precincts where there's allegiance to their village through years, but they don't live there anymore, they don't reside, and it creates an issue when we go in mayoral elections. In this general election doesn't have any impact, but in 2 years when we go to the specific election for the mayors that are regional, the reality, it'll have a big impact, and we need to really look and decide, are we going to go where people live or where their heart is located? So that's something that you all will need to figure out or decide. The last issue is the issue of the PAC. I'm glad to hear that you guys are looking at establishing fines or concerns. I requested, and I finally got the report from the Guam Election Commission when he filed his report, extremely late. But he alleges that he personally donated $23,559. His entire document took maybe 30 minutes to write, because basically he said he received a couple donated, and then all the rest of the money came from him. There were definitely over $25,000 worth of expenditures impacting and having an effect on a general election, on a primary election process. And I think we should not leave people like that. The Peter Santos filing on behalf as chairman of Responsible Guam Political Action Committee. So it's if individuals are going to decide to have such financial impact when the limits of contributions in our election laws are $1,000 per primary election, $1,000 in general, if they don't comply with the requirements to at least make those disclosures public, it's detrimental to our system, and it's only going to erode our democracy. So I would hope that there will be considerations to establish fair fines for individuals, requiring them to actually perform and provide the financial disclosure data. I can guarantee you that under my leadership of the Republican Party, we file on time, and we make a point always to file on time. And people should see the records and be able to share and know the transparency in our election process. That in my comments, is just wanted to do it. If you guys have any questions for me or any statements, more than glad to.
Yeah, sir, your comment, I don't understand the data that you're talking about that you didn't get and you don't feel you got in a timely manner. But let's be clear, you have 3 members of your party who are members of this commission who are being very diligent. We have lots of checks and balances that we are constantly referring to and reviewing to avoid and to make sure our elections are as accurate as possible and to address your concern that there is no double voting taking place. And I hope that the Republican Party joins with the Democratic Party in saying that we have wonderfully fair elections here on Guam.
We do. I think my comments are based on trying to get the data available in modern times, right? So the reality is, Maria and her team have been amazing. It's just something they didn't do on the primary elections. They normally don't do it. I just think that when we're getting now to the 2020, it behooves to actually proceed and provide and collect that data, because it's useful as you look at trends and movement into the future. The second document was document that was not presented to the Guam Election Commission, so they couldn't provide it until it was provided to them.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions or discussions for, okay, thank you. Except ours. All right. That was public comments. Commissioner Seville, did you have anything to?
No,
Okay.
no,
So the next would be adjournment for this meeting. When is our next? We used to meet before the October 11th, the early voting?
Yes. Yeah, how about the 5th?
October 5th.
Okay.
As we work around the precinct officials' training schedule and all. Would the 5th work for the commission?
Is the 5th okay? Now, I'm going to need us to meet sooner than the 5th.
No, 5th is okay for now. And we have to wait, we're thinking about the public notice requirements.
Okay.
How about earlier in the day? Because
Oh,
of
sure,
the
that's
training?
fine. Oh, if we meet earlier on the day, we can do Thursday.
Because of the training schedule?
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to do Thursday
It's
the
already
6th.
kind of set out.
Yeah.
Thursday, it doesn't matter the day, but I think it
October
was the
6th.
timing.
It's, the 5th is Wednesday, 6th is Thursday.
So what time Thursday is going
If it's Thursday, it has to be earlier.
What time are we looking at?
Okay.
If it's Thursday, like lunchtime or so, because we have precinct official
The
training
training
that
is at
night.
5:30.
October 6th, lunchtime.
Or October 5th, 5:30.
Wednesday.
October 5th? 5:30. Yeah.
I think it's easier for the public.
Is everybody okay at 5:30? Okay. So Maria, so October 5th, 5:30 PM here. You need us here,
Yes.
not at the West End.
Correct.
All right. So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting until October 5th, 5:30 PM for,
Madam Chair, there being no further matters to discuss, I hereby make this motion that we adjourn until October 5th, 2022 at 5:30 in the evening. for this meeting Here at the
GC.
GC office.
Motion, I second.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn until October 5th, 5:30 PM, that's Wednesday, to the GEC Conference Room, Suite 205, Oka Building, Tumaini, Guam, seconded by Commissioner Kumatao, seconded by Commissioner Seville. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. We are adjourned until October 5th, 2022.